Hi everyone, I'm Ishmi Mishra and thank you for joining us today in this session of Author Live. Today I'm joined by Miss Namita Das and we're going to talk about her book, Who Ate Our Food? I need to start by saying that that's a wonderful title, something that really interests me, something that I really want to talk to you about. So, Namita, can you introduce yourself and your book to the audience, please?
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Ukiyoto Publishing for having me here and inviting me for this live. Really glad that I got a chance to talk about it over here.
The pleasure is all ours.
About Same here. About my authorship, so I did not start my career as an author. I am a software engineer, and I started working as a software analyst with companies like my first job was with Infosys. Then I worked with Accenture, JP Morgan Chase.
Okay.
After 14 years of this long application software analyst job, one day my husband came home and said that we have to relocate to Uganda because my company is asking me to. And I thought that's a cool idea. I can quit my job and I can get an opportunity to stay with my son
Hmm.
because my son was like 2 years old at that time, and I somewhere, I always wanted to stay at home with him. So I thought this is a good opportunity, and I quit my job and I became a housewife. But then, when I was there at home doing everything that a mother and a wife needs to do, but then after some time, that working lady in me
Yes.
started pinching me like, no, you cannot, like, what are you doing with your time? And I was getting bored after some time, and I thought that maybe I should pursue my hobby of writing, and I thought, let's start writing. And that is where I started writing. So it's been close to 3 years now that I'm writing books.
Mhm.
Who Ate Our Food is one of that. This is the one.
Yes.
So this is a novella that I had written, and I normally write in a humor genre,
Mhm.
but my friend one day told me that why don't you write horror? I would like to read horror. So
Uh,
I said, fine, let me try. And I said, okay. And then I was just thinking about an idea that what we should do, what I can do, how can I create a concept. And one evening I was just having tea with my husband, and I just like a passing thought, I told him about this story in 5 or 6 lines. And he was like, write about it. I said, fine, I'll go ahead and write. But the whole idea was to make a horror story.
hmm.
But, out of habit, I cannot write. None of my writings does not have humor. Somehow it
Okay.
tends to humor. So this one also happened to go towards the humor side. And then I converted into a horror comedy. And that is where
Ah,
this book came out. And so you will see that this title is also like uh, general, but not really general. Who
yeah,
ate our food?
yeah.
And also the cover, if you'll see, she's thinking, and it's like a mystery, like what happened, where did the
Yes,
food go? This one, if you
yes,
see. So
yeah.
that is where. So if you read the story, then you'll understand that there might be a ghost, there might not be a ghost. I cannot say anything, otherwise I'll be giving spoilers.
Yes. We want to keep this a spoiler-free zone, definitely. So,
Yes.
Namita, that's wonderful. The fact that you write majorly in humor, it kind of reflects in the way you're talking to me as well. Like, I'm laughing through your stories, and I can completely understand that, you when you left your job and after a while you wanted to start pursuing your hobby, which brought us to this wonderful career sort of that you have built on your writing. So, you mentioned that you usually write humor, and you've definitely written
Mhm.
other books. You have also dwelled in
Mhm.
children literature, right? So,
Yes, yes.
going from humor to a different genre, horror, even though you have kind of like, made a mash of both of them, but like,
Mm.
there's still a shift of genre that you have
Yeah.
that's reflected in your book. So, can you tell me about that writing process? Like, of course, you had this idea, you thought about going into this genre, but when you start writing, how does that look like?
Um, when First of all, whenever I'm trying to write a story, be it a small block story or a proper novel, I have a outline in my mind. Like, I want the story to go this way.
Mhm.
And then maybe if it's a big novel and I want to write like 10, 15 chapters, I'll
Mhm.
outline it in my diary that this chapter has, like, I have this thing in one chapter, then the other thing in that chapter. Whatever scenes I want, I just outline
Yeah.
in my diary. and then I start writing that scene.
Okay.
And whatever that comes in that scene is just spontaneous. I
Okay.
don't think about that scene or the dialogues or anything. That I Yeah, I wonder, I mean, I'm sitting alone and I think that, yeah, my characters are doing so and so, they're talking like this, they're doing this. I put it on paper, but most of the things are spontaneous, most of the jokes are spontaneous. Like if I'm writing something and I feel like what will be an apt response over here for my character so that it
Right.
becomes funny, that becomes spontaneously. I make jokes on the on the go.
Okay.
I cannot be thinking about, yeah, this will be a joke or this will be funny or something. No, my style is more of writing on the go.
Okay.
So
So you're
that
very
is my writing
spontaneous.
process. Yeah, like, and if I try to make it up before writing, it doesn't come out so great. That is what
Mhm.
I have observed about myself. That
Okay.
I need an outline. That I need a scene. Like they're having coffee somewhere. I know my characters are having coffee, but the conversation that is going to go,
Hmm.
that will be spontaneous. That has to
Right.
be
Right.
like I imagine myself over there, and how will I speak, or how will someone else whom the character is based on, how is that person going to speak? That
Hmm.
way the writing goes ahead.
Okay, I think that's very interesting because everyone has the writing process, right? Like for
Yeah.
some people, spontaneity is not something they can strive for
Hmm.
because they need to
Yeah.
plan everything out. But on the
Hmm.
contrary, for you, you do have an outline, of course. Like people do have an outline of what they're going to put in. But like when it comes to writing,
Hmm.
you write more on the go, like you mentioned.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I do want to make this note that writing in horror and in comedy, it's a skill because you need a perfect timing, right? You need that punchline.
Yeah.
You need that
Yeah.
perfect timing, right? Both for comedy and for horror. Like there are these particular scenes where that needs to have that particular impact on the audience. So the fact that you're able to do that in both genres. So I do want to know a bit about your history with writing because that this skill has to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah. So I'll say that these two genres are my favorite
Mhm.
because when I was young, at that time we all kids would sit together and we'll discuss ghost stories. Like,
Ah, okay.
in my village, this and this happened, or my auntie
Right.
said this and this. So that is where I feel this horror storytelling skills improved for me, because I have been doing that, and somehow we I enjoyed that, those sessions when we are talking. And also, I'll tell you one funny incident.
Okay.
When I was in hostel, I did my engineering, and 4 years I was in hostel, and at that time, uh, all these girls, like we 5 or 6 girls were there, and someone told me that you can do plank chit and call a ghost, and you can ask questions. And we were like so excited that let's do it. And then one night we all sat, we took a cardboard, and on that we wrote ABCD numbers and everything, and yes and no, and we took a coin, and
Ah.
we said that who should we call. And then we thought, okay, let's call Gandhiji. But then Gandhiji did not work out, and then one of my friends said that let me call my nani. I said okay. And then I don't know what happened over there, and everyone was like, whatever we were asking, the coin was moving. It's not like the coin was moving on its own. We had a finger on the coin. So maybe one of the girls
Okay.
was playing this prank. Okay,
Okay.
all the 5 6 fingers were on the coin, but still the coin was moving.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, and we could feel that the coin is shifting. So maybe one of the girls was playing a prank on us, and that happened. But we spent sleepless nights after that. because
Wow.
we really thought that the nani was here. We did not know if the nani went back or whatever happened. So this is where this mashup became of
Ah.
comedy and horror. So this was my first,
Right.
first incident of horror comedy. So I started with horror mashup of comedy. Then after I got married. My husband is a very, very humorous person. He is cracking jokes on the go.
Hmm.
So we had like so many funny banter moments. One day I decided that I'll start a Facebook blog, and all the banter moments I want to put on that, because they were really
Okay.
funny and the punchlines were so good. Everyone will be like laughing, and they'll not stop. So I started putting that on the Facebook blog, and that is where I started writing humor stories. And
Okay.
this is how my journey began, that from blogging. First,
Okay.
like for storytelling sessions, then blogging, and then writing on the for the books. So
That's a
that is how it
wonderful,
went.
wonderful story, and so conventional but so traditional in a way, from like kids telling story to you growing up
Yeah,
with stories, and then you marrying someone who is also, I'm assuming, really good at telling stories and cracking jokes. So and
yeah.
you start writing a blog, then you move on to writing and publishing. So definitely very inspirational as well. And I will get into this further in the chat. But before that, I also wanted to just talk about your book itself, Who Ate Our Food.
Mm-hmm.
So, you mentioned that it's a novella, right? So,
Yeah. Mm.
novella is definitely a short novel. So,
Short.
do
Yeah.
you think like that was necessary for the story, or do you think you can like write longer forms of horror comedy, or just horror, or just comedy?
In humor, like if someone is expecting a humor novel, it's very difficult to engage a reader,
Right.
because if someone opens a book thinking that it's a humor book, they would want at least a punchline after every 5 or 10 pages.
Hmm.
And if it is not there, then they'll call it out that it's not a humor book. So
Right.
sometimes I feel that even if you're trying to write a 50-60,000 word novel,
Mm-hmm.
it might be difficult to keep those punchlines like regularly coming in, but it's not impossible. I am working on one novel and right now, and I hope it will be ready soon and maybe get published also soon. So in that I have tried to incorporate it, this learnings that I have, to
Okay.
keep the humor constant. But
Mhm.
in a rom-com, even in a romantic comedy, what happens is people expect some kind of emotion. Like
Mhm.
if you want to connect with a person, humor connects. Humor in any field, any culture, anything, anywhere, humor, you can connect with a person, but you cannot you cannot be able to bond just because of the humor. To bond
Right.
with someone, you have to have those emotional connections with each other, then only you'll
Right.
able to be relate to the other person. So in a romantic comedy, you need that angle of that
Right.
emotional connection. So I have tried to put that emotional connection as well, and I'm trying to create a novel. um,
Okay.
Hopefully that can be done. Other than that, when we talk about this novella,
Mhm.
so I started writing this thinking about 5,000 words in my mind. That was my target. Like it was a very short story for me. But then,
Okay.
as I told, that when I write, it becomes spontaneous and I start adding things. So
Right. Right.
even a few characters in this book have been added on the go. When I was writing,
Okay.
I thought that here this is necessary, here this is necessary. So that way I tried to, and then somehow it became like, it crossed I think 11,000 words,
Hmm.
and that is where it became a novella. And then I thought that maybe I'll publish it as a book, because
Okay.
my initial idea was to only put it in some magazine or send it to some
Ah.
magazine, because
Okay.
5,000 words is like, it cannot be a book actually. But
Right.
then it crossed 10,000 words, and I was pitching at that time, and Ukiyoto Publishing readily agreed that they were ready to go ahead with small novellas also. I was like, okay, it's a good opportunity to bring it out to people, because uh, publishing books is gets more exposure compared to putting it in some magazine or blogs. I'm not saying that it's not a good idea. It's a good idea depending on the magazine's outreach, but books have a different, different taste, different essence itself. So
True.
that is how this book came up.
Yeah. And talking about your book, I feel like the cover page and the length definitely adds to that whole element of someone wanting to pick that book up with the title itself. Like I
Yeah.
said, when I first came across your book, I wanted to immediately read it. I didn't know what food we are talking about. I didn't know who we are talking about. I just wanted to know who ate the food. So I feel like that definitely adds to the publishing your book aspect. That kind of it.
Yeah.
There's this whole experience that adds to it, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the characters in your book, it's really interesting that you mentioned that you wanted it to be a short story, because I feel like
Yeah.
this length is perfect. You have all, like you said that you are working on romantic comedy, right? But I could find elements of that in your book as well. And I could, and definitely lots of humor, lots of punchlines here and there, all these characters. So, can you talk a bit about who these characters are based on, and in general, how do you approach your characters? Because, like I said, writing comedy a skill. So, I'm sure our audience would also like to know, how to, get to writing characters in that way.
Um, my writing is mostly inspired from real life. Like even if you read my books, any of my books or any of my stories, you will feel that there's some relatable thread that you will feel that, yeah, I have noticed this somewhere, or I have noticed this in some other person. So even in this book, it starts as the couple, a new married couple, they are trying to find a new apartment to shift in Mumbai. So that was totally my experience. Like when my husband and I were looking for apartments in Mumbai, we
Mm.
were roaming around with brokers, and they used to show us like uh, stupid houses, and the rents were so high. And
Yes.
in Mumbai, getting a flat of your choice where everything fits and with the budget, it's very
Yeah,
difficult. So
definitely.
I took that total episode or that total experience of mine, and I tried to build that character and that situation over there based on real life. Uh, Going ahead, when I moved to Uganda,
Hmm.
after that, the experience with my landlord over here.
Hmm.
So that the person, the kind of person he was, and first I was with the landlady, so the kind of person she was, and she was a bit, very nosy and trying to be like, what you're doing, you're not putting nails, you're not painting, your son is not scratching the walls and all. So I took her character a bit and I tried to put that in the
Ah,
landlord and landlady thing, that how they behave,
okay.
and the specific characters of landlords, that how
Yes,
they
yes.
can be, or what is in their mindset. Some landlords are very good, very nice. I'm not saying that everyone is like that, but that it comes with a peculiar trait for any kind of role that you're trying to show. If you're trying to show a landlord, if you show them very nice and very humble, it doesn't go somehow
Yeah.
with the characteristics.
Yeah.
And considering the plot I am using, like I'm trying to show that there's a landlord over here and I'm trying to find a flat. So
Hmm.
this is how you have to tweak your characters.
Right.
That is it. And yeah, I think, and the broker also, I put him as a newbie who is trying to build his father's broker estate. Like
Ah,
he himself is trying to do something else, but he does not have the knowledge, so he's just doing his father's business. So I just use that somewhere. Like I met one broker who was like that. He did not wanted to
okay,
do
okay.
this brokering thing, but he was just doing for his father. So I use that thing in my book over here. So
Okay.
my characters are mostly based on observation. If
Mhm.
I see, maybe like even in this interview, I might use some of your traits.
Oh my God. I'll be on a lookout in your next book
I keep
for a side
watching.
character.
Maybe I don't know. Like I observe a lot.
Yeah.
That is one thing that I observe a lot, and I use that in
Hmm.
my writings because it makes the story and the characters very relatable.
Hmm.
Because even if it's fiction, it has to be relatable, right?
Yes.
It cannot be
Yes.
completely, unless it is a fantasy.
Hmm.
Even fantasy people want that the character should be relatable.
Yes.
Otherwise, otherwise no one would want to read it.
True. 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 And I think it also makes for a wonderful advice for our audience, some budding authors who might be watching this, that, finding relatability in your characters
Mhm.
and, trying to observe your surroundings so that you can build
Yeah.
stories out of that. I think that's a wonderful advice.
And
Talking
I would just like
about,
to add one point over here. Relatability does not mean that the character has to be likable. You can
ah,
also make that character as annoying as possible, that if you are annoyed with your neighbor. So
mm,
that is also relatable, right? So if your character is annoying, so be it. Don't worry that your character is annoying and people won't like it. That's the
ah,
trait. That's the personality trait. So if he or she is annoying, let them be annoying. Let it show.
mm,
Don't try to make your characters likable and every reader should be able to like it. No, it's not happening. We don't like everyone we meet, so
true.
it's not necessary that you should like everyone everything that you read.
True, true. That's true. And again, another wonderful advice. And talking about advice, would you like to give any other advice on your writing process to your audience?
Keep writing. That is what I can say. Like any budding writer or any aspiring writer, I would say that keep writing and don't overwhelm yourself by writing too much.
Hmm.
Like don't put a pressure that I want to write 50,000 words. Like there are some sessions, writing sprints, where they give you a deadline that you have to write so and so number of
Hmm.
words. in a stipulated time. Don't overwhelm yourself. You will kill your own creativity. And secondly, the next time when you try, you will have that pressure that I cannot do it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you won't
Right.
retry ever. So don't do that. Whenever you feel like writing, you write, but also be consistent.
Mm.
Like it's not like one day you write for 2 hours and then you're not writing for 2 weeks. That
Mm.
is not going to help. Even
Right.
writing needs practice.
True.
Even how you write, how you form your sentences, it will come with practice. You write every day, you will do fine after 1 year, 2 years.
Mm. Yeah, after all, practice makes perfect. So
Yes.
definitely. And yeah, consistency is definitely something, because people, I feel like a lot of people think that, if the writing isn't coming to them on that day, they feel
Mm.
like they have failed. But you just need to
Yeah.
keep trying, the next day,
Right.
maybe something better comes to your mind and it translates better on the page. So yeah.
Yeah. The only good thing is that, see, writing is a creative field. It's not like your 9 to 5 job
Hmm.
that even if you're
Right.
feeling sick and you're not in your 100% good state of mind, if you're not feeling good that day, skip writing that day. But
Hmm.
don't miss out on the next day.
Hmm.
Go ahead and start writing the next day. It's okay, take rest, because you need creativity while you're writing. You cannot be like just I'm trying to
Yeah.
write something. That's not possible. And that's not going to give you a good output. You're just going to waste your time.
Right.
So
Right.
be in your good state of mind and go ahead and write.
Wonderful, wonderful advice. Also very consistent with you, because you've been writing for so long, and we've just been talking about like this comedy or horror genres, but you've also written children's literature, right?
Yeah.
So, would you like to talk a bit about those books?
Yeah, sure. Actually, when 2.5 years back, when I thought about getting into book publishing, my first project was Keen Little Cuckoo. That was the
Hmm.
children's picture book that I was writing. So it was
Okay.
all for my son, because my son had speech delay, and his therapist told me that you have to read more books for him. So I used to read books, and then while reading those books, I got a concept that maybe we can design so and so alphabet story book, because I haven't seen an alphabet story book ever. So where we are also teaching alphabets plus there's a story.
Ah.
So that is what I started writing with. But then, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, but it published after 1 year, because
Okay.
picture book is very difficult. Not all publishers are wanting to go ahead because of the illustrations, and it takes a lot of time. Per page illustration, it goes around a week of drawing and sketching, and it has to go with the story. So it's a long drawn process. So somehow it took like more than a year for that book to come out. And in between, I wrote these books. So these were like
Oh,
after I finished those, but this came out
okay.
before the
Okay.
picture book. So
Right.
I would say that, yeah, the inspiration was starting with the picture book itself. Like if that wouldn't have taken so much time and I wouldn't have used those time in writing these novellas, maybe I wouldn't have written these novellas ever. I would have stuck to writing children's literature only. So
Okay.
it was just that this is how the timeline went through. That picture
Mhm.
book or children's book takes a lot of time.
I see. Can you elaborate a bit more on, like, the differences between writing for children and writing for adults? Because you've done both.
Yeah. So in children's book, depending on the age, you have to make sure the length of your sentences and what kind of vocab you are using.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot be using like very long words because they are not able to speak at that age. Like until 5, they are not using those long and the where you need a lot of blending
Yeah.
words. Like I don't have a word example right now, but maybe like word like gorgeous. It
Uh,
might be difficult for them to speak that word, but
yeah.
also having said that, it does not mean that you cannot use those words.
Mm-hmm.
Come in between, like don't use very complex words over there. Use simple but a slightly complex word is okay, but don't overthrow those words.
Mm-hmm.
Because some writers, what they do just to sound fancy, they'll write, even in adult book, I have noted that they'll use so much of fancy words, and then after few minutes you'll be like, after 3 or 4 lines, I don't understand this
Yeah.
sentence, and you will want to like look for a thesaurus or something.
Yeah.
You'll be like, what is this? And it
Yeah.
it kills your reading
Mm.
interest itself in that book. So don't get too fancy. And for kids, absolutely not. Like remember that they are still learning to read, learning to speak. So
Mm.
you have to remember what you are writing, then they should get it. So and whenever you're writing for the kids, make sure that one experiment that you can do is your story.
Mm.
Speak it, talk it out to a child. Like,
Okay.
take, if you have some child near you, sit with them and you tell that story to them and
Uh-huh.
see their response. Like, are they able to understand? What is the expression?
Yeah.
Do they have any questions after that? That will be a very good way for writing a children's storybook, because you will understand how much engaging it is,
Mm-hmm.
and is the kid liking it or not, or is it something different that you can incorporate in that story, or is there something you can remove from that story which is not important for them.
Mm.
So this is a very good tip when you're
Yeah.
trying to write children's literature.
Yeah, I think talking about just everything you've said about, your experience with writing for children, the thought process that goes with it. I think there's a common misconception between people that, writing for children is easy. But
No.
there's the amount of thought process you need to put in there. You need to be imaginative. And like you mentioned, you need to think about it from the perspective of a child. So
Yes.
that's like, I think again, that's again a wonderful advice that you've given, wonderful tips. And can you talk a bit about, writing for adults, like just a like a big difference between, writing for children and writing for adults that you think that has been a key learning for you?
uh, okay. For kids, it's like a certain age group, like a child between 2 to 5, or any child between 2 to 5 can pick up your book and they will read it. But when you're writing for adults, it's not necessary that anyone above 18 is going to pick up your book,
Hmm.
because as they grow, their interest also starts diversifying. So
Right.
someone who likes comedy might not like horror.
Hmm.
Someone who likes horror might not like non-fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who likes to read non-fiction does not like to read some other genre.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the difference that I have understood for writing for children and writing for adults. Like,
Okay.
if I expect one reader to like all of my books, it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance that one of my readers who liked my first book might not like my second book.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So this is one key difference. I'm not sure if it is making sense, but that is what I understand. That it's a particular age group for
Yeah.
kids, that you know that, yeah, they are going to pick up the book, or even
Yeah.
if they're not going to read or like the book, maybe they'll scroll through the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Pictures are enticing.
Yeah.
Kids love it. So so any kid until 5 years, at least until 5 years age, even if they are not able to read the book or they don't like the story, I'm sure they'll try to look at the pictures at least. They'll like
Right.
the pictures, they'll scroll through it. But with adult books, that's not necessary, because
Mm.
I have also noticed in romantic comedies, some people like explicit scenes. Like,
Mm.
there has to be some explicit scene. If it is not there, then don't call it a romance novel. And some
Mm-hmm.
people like only comedy. I mean, romantic comedy, it's like, yeah, comedy running around the trees and watching the
Yeah.
moon and everything. That kind of comedy. So
Right.
it depends on the interest level and the thought process of that person.
True.
So expecting every reader to like everything that you have written, it's a
Uh,
vague expectation.
Makes sense. So how do you deal with that? Like, do you diversify your writing, or are you focusing on, a particular genre that that a lot of people have picked up from your books?
I focus on writing what I can write,
Uh,
because I tried doing that I'll impress the audience or I'll impress the readers by writing what they like to write. But then, there are so many millions of people. I cannot write million different copies, right?
right.
So it is better that I write what I am good at, or
Mm.
what I am confident at, that yes, I can write this thing very well. So I'll just go ahead and write that, because I cannot write mystery.
Mm.
It's not my forte. I cannot deal with, like, in mystery there are twists and twists and twists coming in, and you are trying to hide that mystery, and you are not opening up until the last page.
Right.
I
Right.
cannot do that. But
Okay.
I know people who love mystery. So
Mm.
if I try to go and impress them, nothing is going to
Right.
come out, right?
That's
It will, whatever I have written, it will be like something stupid because I tried to impress someone. So it is better to write what you are good at, what I know. Like, humor is my niche, I'll write that.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there is audience out there.
That's
That there are people out there who will love my reading. It's not that everyone will like it, but there will be some people who like it.
I
So
love
better
that
focus
about
on
you.
them.
I love that about you, Namita, because you're trying to stay true to yourself, but you're also experimenting because you went from writing comedy to horror and now you're dabbling into romantic comedy. And I'm
Yeah.
extremely excited about your next book. So, yeah, whenever that comes out, you can trust that I am definitely picking up that book. And with that,
Thank you.
our time is up. So, thank you so much, Namita, for joining me today on this session. I learned so many things from you, and I'm sure our audience did too. And I hope you keep writing. Would you like to say something to the audience before we end the session?
Read my book.
Yes. That's the biggest,
No,
that should be the
jokes
biggest
apart.
takeaway.
Yeah, that was the whole agenda, right? Ultimately
Yeah.
promoting my book and
Yes.
promoting it and
I'll be
showing it.
Yes, and I'll be putting a link for your book in the description box as well. So the audience, I definitely assure you that you're going to love it. So definitely pick up Who Ate Our Food. Very beautiful, beautifully written, and also like you're laughing. You like you mentioned, there is a bit of a mystery there. So even if you're not actively writing in mystery, there's definitely a bit of mystery you can expect from this book as well. So, yeah. Thank you again, Namita. It was wonderful chatting with you today, and I hope to see you again.
Same here. And I'm very glad that I could come here and we got a chance to connect.
Yes.
So hopefully see you soon.
Yes. Thank you so much, Namita. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.